Welcome back for season 2 of Everyday Business Solutions. My name is Haley Morris. I'm your podcast coordinator and host. Our podcast aims to bring the expertise of business professionals straight to your ears. And for this season, we're going to be talking about important connections and how you can utilize them to elevate your career to the next level. If that's something that you're interested in, just keep listening. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Everyday Business Solutions. My name is Haley Morris. I'm your podcast coordinator and host. And today with me, I have a couple of old friends of mine. I have Jovan Sanson and Alex Edinger. And so we're going to be talking today about how to make yourself the most desirable applicant you can, whether you're a college student looking for your first job or you're a professional looking for a new opportunity. So if we want to go ahead, I'm going to have Jovan introduce himself and then Alex.
Hello, everyone. As Haley said, my name is Jovan Sanson. I had the pleasure of meeting Haley in college at the wonderful University of Toledo. I graduated in 2019, and now I'm working for 3M in our Construction Home Improvement Markets division, currently working in outside sales.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Edinger. I, as well, went to school with Jovan and Haley and graduated in May of 2019. Haley and I go a little bit further back and went to high school together, but had a great experience in college as well, as we were a part of the same professional organization. Currently, I work for a company called Seamless.AI, who is headquartered out of Columbus, Ohio, but I am located temporarily down in West Palm Beach, Florida, while we work remote. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you both for coming on. And obviously, Alex has quite an advantage with a little bit nicer weather down there in Florida right now. But like they said, we all met essentially back in college in PSE, Pi Sigma Epsilon, and we've stayed in touch ever since. Though, of course, imagine my surprise when I walk into a recruitment event and the president is someone I recognize from high school. So... Like I said, though, we're going to be talking about being a desirable applicant. And there's a lot of ways that this might apply for you, especially given the fact that there's been a lot of job changes and shifts in the last year for many people. And so what we're going to talk about first is actually back to those college days and what we did to make ourselves the most desirable applicants possible when seeking either a great internship or that first starter job. So Alex, Jovan, whoever would like to lead off, what are some of those traits or what are some of those things that you built up as a college student to make yourself desirable?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start off for us. First thing is go to class. Make sure you're going to class, make sure you're taking the actual education seriously. Depending on what your major, GPA might not be the biggest factor that an employer, chooses you for, but it always does matter to a certain extent. It does represent you to a certain extent. So first things first, go to class. Next thing is make sure to get involved. And obviously we'll dig a little bit deeper into these, but make sure to get involved. That's something that's going to separate you from your competition. And then another piece of advice I'll give you as well is, and obviously this, depends on your major a little bit, but for example, with us all being in business majors, when you figure out the company that you like, start to reach out to them early and soon, and make sure you're staying in the area and make sure you're staying in contact with them, because it's going to be a lot easier for them to want to hire somebody that they recognize or interview somebody that they recognize, rather than somebody that might be coming up to them, come junior, senior year, and they're just starting to get to know.
Yeah, going back to your point, Jovan, on going to class and taking your education seriously, I didn't always do that to the best of my ability in school. And I can tell you, I kick myself for it all the time because, even some of I had no interest in finance. I knew I wasn't going to go into a finance profession by any means of it. But now that I'm in the real world, I wish I understood finance a little bit more. And same thing with some other classes as well. So it is important to take advantage of it. You have the world is your oyster. So it's something I kick myself for all the time.
I'm really curious because if I remember right, you guys were in business all 4 years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember because I think at the end, you got the, where is it, coasters from PSE for being in the chapter for 4 years and attending all of the national events. I was going to say, when it comes to being involved, you two are like the kings of involvement on campus and really kind of getting ahead.
Yeah, so that's a great point that you bring up, and I know Jovan mentioned it as well. That's a tough thing to do right now in a virtual world, is getting involved in attending those events. But there are so many people out there right now that are not taking advantage of that, and they're using the virtual experience as a excuse to not show up to networking events, things that are hosted by the university, by different companies. And I'm telling you right now, it's like when I go and I was representing my previous company at those virtual events, and like there weren't students that were showing up. And I know that the students that did show up, I mean, that's giving you such a competitive edge against everybody else who's using these as the same excuse. Like, this is one of the biggest challenges that any of us have ever faced, especially the younger professionals in our professional career, and it could be the most difficult. So showing that you still have that edge, that you're still hungry, go out and get it, but you have to show up. And I think that's a huge thing that a lot of people are missing right now.
Exactly. There's an old saying that goes, tough times create strong men, and that's going to be more true here. You have only a certain number of individuals that are really taking advantage of everything they have right now. And I'll tell you what, if there's any way for that dream, job, that dream company to hire you, it's being the only one at the networking event. How much does that, separate you from your competition?
I would say from the employer perspective, it probably definitely, with tough times, you see who's going to put in the effort. It becomes a lot more clear who's got what it takes and doesn't. And it's almost like an extra vetting process for them. Did you even show up for the networking events? Did you try to put yourself out there? Did you try to wait out a storm that might last a couple of years, So isn't that scary? But yeah, I've talked to Deirdre Jones from the University of Toledo and everything too. And just even from the employer, her perspective looking at employers is very true. What businesses and what employees or potential future employees, like the students, are actually showing up, showing out, are adapting to the crazy situations. And those people are like put up on pedestals. And it's not like they're, these extraordinary people. They're just the people who put in the effort. You don't have to be that 4.0 student naturally. You don't have to be the president to do great things. You just have to be willing to work for it. So
absolutely. And something else that I've heard from some of the people I still know on campus is that some events that are being hosted virtually right now, there are like charges for them, whether it be like a $20, $30, $40 event. If you have those opportunities, I know 20, 30, 40 bucks is tough, especially when you're still in school and you're balling on a budget. But I mean, if you have those opportunities to pay small fees to be a part of bigger events, getting yourself out there, building, expanding your network, I mean, it's invaluable. I mean, you can think about it as it's your bar tab one weekend. Like, go for it. And you really have to pay and invest in yourself. If you want to be that number one candidate and you want to be the most desirable, attractive person going into the real world. So then when you're graduating, you're not stuck without a job. And I mean, it'll pay 10 times over. So just make sure you're investing in yourself too, because I know that's a challenge for a lot of people right now.
And also, even going on to the personal side of things as well, a lot of these events, they're going to be some of the best memories that you have in your college career. And you really don't want to miss out on that. You really don't want to miss out on, getting involved in certain organizations and getting to meet people. Obviously, right now isn't necessarily the best time to actually be around people, especially in large groups. But you really just still want to take full advantage of the opportunity you have in college, because once you graduate, it's gone. I mean, you're never going to have that same experience again. And, you're going to end up an old man like us, wanting to be back in our heyday.
That's fair. So something that's at the top of my mind, and I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are, and it's something I struggled with in college, and I even struggled with it in my first year and a half in my professional career, is how to build your professional network when you are in a virtual setting. And one of the biggest pieces of advice that I had gotten from one of my mentors was just to not be afraid to like reach out to people on LinkedIn. Like, you don't just go for the hiring managers, because the hiring managers of these companies that you want are getting bombarded by thousands of other people all the time anyway. But it's important. Like, I mean, if you want to be in a sales role, if you want to be in a finance role, to reach out to account executives, SDRs, even if they're brand new out of school, they were in your shoes, finance people at companies that you're interested in. And don't just try to do it to kiss up to them. Like, reach out, show a genuine interest in what their job is, and start asking them questions to make sure it is something that you want to do, because you're going to hear it directly from those people. And I think that's incredibly important, and it's something that I'm still learning today.
Exactly. And we can speak from our own perspective as well. I remember back when I was in school, it definitely was, I definitely could be nervous about reaching out to employers, especially just directly by email or through LinkedIn. But now I think about it, and I almost wish, especially when we go to certain recruitment events, that more students reach out to me and more students, ask me for advice or whatever it may be, or maybe even, to shadow me for a day. That would be great. That'd be phenomenal. And then I would remember that candidate. Come time and reach out to whoever the individual is that actually makes the final decision, saying that they took the extra time to actually shadow me or work with me. So it really does mean a big difference.
I think I would have to agree, because I know this was one area where I was really bad at in college, just in general, is I went to events, but I was always scared to talk to people. I'm a little introverted as much as my job may be talking. I'm very introverted, and I get panic a lot when I have to talk to somebody. So if I have to call somebody at work and I know they don't know I'm calling, it makes me ridiculously nervous. But I realized, looking back, I graduated in May. And so I've not been out of college that long, but I was going through my LinkedIn, and I have so many like VPs and CEOs and stuff like that. And a lot of it's because of my job. But talking to these people and talking to various people, a lot of times it's just like you said, LinkedIn is a great place to start, especially right now, because the world is virtual. Just reaching out and talking to people, or if somebody reaches out to you and says, hey, I want to get coffee, even if they work for somewhere like finance, like get coffee with them for a second. Because, I was like, is she going to try to like sell me insurance or something? And she did. And she just literally networked and was like, oh, what do you want to do with life? Like, what are you thinking long term? And then like a week later, she sent me an email. Hey, did you start doing what we were talking about your writing and stuff like that? Because that was something we talked about. And then I sat down at a dealership because I got curious about cars a little early for my lease. And I talked to a guy for an hour, and he's a local, and he knows all of these different people. And my neighbor knows all of these different people. And then just talking to people, I realized, especially locally, there's my network. And you can do that in college. You don't have to wait until after you graduate. It's always there, talking to your professors before and after class, talking to other students. There's a lot of non-traditional students in business who have already had networks that they may not even realize are right there. So you can build off of those, and it's so much easier than it seems. You just have to be willing to get to know people, not for like a reason, like you're not trying to sell to them, or you're not trying to get their job or get in their company. Just getting to know people is going to help you a long way.
Big time. And I think that's actually a great segue to the personal side of the business as well, in terms of our topic that we're discussing today. One of the biggest pieces of advice when I worked at my first internship, my manager had given me the advice every time that I network with somebody within the company and I'm asking them questions, genuine interest, not just doing it to get my face out there. At the end of every conversation, my final question would be, if you could recommend 3 people to talk to at this company, who would they be? And then would you be willing to make an introduction for me? So that one person that she introduced me to, I would go and have a sit down one-on-one with them. I would ask them questions, I would interview them, whatever it may be. And at the end of the interview, I'd say, who would you recommend that I talk to? These are what my goals are. Do you have anybody you can connect me with? And I think that was huge, because I mean, when I went to talk to the next person, I got 3 more, and it kept building and expanding, and I got to know some really amazing people.
Yes, exactly. So especially on the professional side too, once you are in your internship, or let's say, I guess say once you're into your career as well, make sure you're still continuing to network within the company. You don't know what your next role is necessarily going to be. It might not be on the same team. It might not be in the same division, depending on how large the company is or what all they exactly do. So you never know who the next person you network with is going to potentially do for you down the road, especially if you leave a really good impression on them.
I agree, and I think something important to keep in mind too is, Jovan, you just said you don't know what your next role is going to be. You don't know if it's going to be in the same division. So understanding and getting to know different aspects of the business, or if you start taking on new projects that aren't necessarily directly correlated with your role, when there are openings for bigger and better positions, I mean, it's only going to make you more of the obvious choice moving forward. That's just the plain and simple truth, because I mean, if you're going to compare somebody's performance to mine and we're very similar, it's like, who knows the business more? Who knows more than just what they're required to do? And I know we're talking about what makes you the most desirable or attractive candidate for seeking new opportunities, but I mean, it's the same thing. That's seeking new opportunities externally from your current company or internally. I mean, it's equally as important.
It is. It's very important. And another piece of advice, guys, something I've always been told, 2 things you can actually control: your attitude and your effort. If you show up being pleasant, if you're a pleasant individual to others, not only to your colleagues and your superiors, but also your customers as well. You don't know who's necessarily going to be there for your next role. Maybe it might even be one of your customers, one of your own customers that offers you a position because they enjoy you so much and they think you're so good at your job. So really just make sure that you're always putting in good attitude, always putting in a great effort, and always just being pleasant to other individuals. And we've sort of touched on it, but make sure that you're making sure these relationships, they're more than just making it for what it's about you, for what you're actually out of it. Make sure you're actually providing something to every relationship.
I was just going to say, definitely. I know a lot of what I have to do now has been networking, and it's been interesting because I started this role during the pandemic. So all of my networking has been, or began, virtually. And a lot of what I've learned with getting to know people is they don't care about you until you care about them. So if you're only caring about like getting that position, or you only care about making yourself look good, it's like this idea of being genuine. And you probably hear this a lot if somebody's giving you tips on how to interview. Be genuine. And it doesn't mean like, oh, be completely yourself. Like you're not going to show up to interview in a sweats just because that's what you're most comfortable in. It means genuinely connect, genuinely want to get to know people, cultivate that desire to learn about the people and the company and the positions around you and the teamwork aspect, like that dynamic of how people connect around you. So.
Yeah, and I agree with that completely. Jovan, I'm curious to know, you said it's important to make sure you're adding value to them as much as they're adding value to you. What would you say are, I mean, that's a tough thing to do, because I mean, sometimes you are going to go into those conversations with something in mind, not necessarily something that you want. But like, if I want to give back and add value to that other person who I'm looking for a mentorship from, what kind of things would you recommend there?
Yeah, so the answer to that really can range depending on the field, or the difference in level. Maybe the mentor you're reaching out to, maybe there's really not a whole lot you can offer them, because maybe you're new, maybe you're an intern, or 1 year in, and they maybe have worked for the company for 30 years. But I've found that if you look hard enough, there's usually something you can offer them, whether it be your time, whether it be, I've realized for a lot of my colleagues a little bit older, maybe a little bit of help with Salesforce or Excel or something they might not be the best with. But if you look hard enough, there's always something you can offer. We all have worth. We all have something we can offer to the world. And if you can't find something, then honestly, in my opinion, I think you're just not looking hard enough for something.
Speaking of mentorship, because that's a big thing, even as you've gotten into your career, if you're looking for opportunity or you're looking to grow or learn, a lot of people seek out mentorship and that avenue for growing, that almost direct learning under somebody. But how do you identify then, Alex, I'll ask this question to you since you mentioned it. How do you identify somebody who could be a good mentor from you, especially when you're in a larger company and there's so many people who could influence you?
Yeah, so at my first company that I worked at, one of the first mentors that I had actually interviewed me in my when I was just getting started out, getting ready to go out of college, and I loved his energy. I loved his attitude. I loved his energy. Like, we had a 15-minute interview, and I walked out of it like hyped up, ready to go, saying like, and my final question to him in my interview was like, "What do I need to do to be on your team?" Like, that's final goal here. Like, I want to tell you right now, like, I want to work for you. And he was somebody that I wouldn't even work for 3 or 4 years at my first company. But what was unique about that is, like, I was inspired by what he was doing. And as soon as I got the role with the company, and as soon as I joined, I sent him an email saying, "Hey, like, I made it in. I get to work here now. I'm super excited. I want to just connect with you. I want to see what's going on with you." And then during that phone call, so I mean, you look at top performers, you look at people that excite you, you look at people that intrigue you, and then reach out. Hey, for X, Y, and Z reason, I love that you do this. Do you mind if we have a 15 or 20-minute conversation? I'd love to hear about your path within the company, what you've seen people do well, what you've seen people do not so well. And then, I mean, at the end of that conversation, we went to lunch, and we had a great talk. And at the end, I said, "Hey, I really look up to you, and I would love if you would be a mentor to me throughout my time here at the company." And I mean, he was all for it. People want to help other people. So finding those top performers, I mean, there were even some stories that I heard where they would release like a metric list of the leaderboard of who the top performers were within the company. Look at the top 5 and send an email to the top 5, like, "Hey, what do you do to get to where you're at?" And have those conversations then. I think that's probably the easiest way if you don't have a first impression or first personal conversation with them prior to reaching out.
Yeah. Another big thing for me is I like to take some time to self-reflect and really think about my goals with the company in general, and then go from there. Finding somebody in the company that reflects sort of what the outcome of your goals might be, or maybe necessarily where you want to be within the company, is a really good way to go about it. And another great thing is that when you're talking to your coworkers, when you're talking to your colleagues, even when you're talking to manager, ask them for recommendations, and they'll give you recommendations off of your goals and what they see in you and what you want to do. And that can really take you a far way. That's actually how the mentor that I have now, I actually got, was because it was a recommendation from somebody else. Reach out to this individual. I think you would not only click very well with them, but I think it could definitely lead you down the right path. So yeah, don't be afraid to do some self-reflection, look at your goals, what you want to do, and reach out to other individuals that you trust. You know, they might not necessarily be your mentor, but that you trust to potentially pick a mentor for you or give you a good recommendation.
That's spot on. And sometimes, even when we were talking earlier about understanding new aspects of your business, or if they're in other divisions, whatever it may be. I mean, there were times, so in my previous role, I was in renewals. So I was talking to customers about their current contracts. I wasn't necessarily on the new product side of the business. Like some of the guys that did work in new product sales, I would reach out to them and say, "Hey, like, I would love to just sit in on your calls so I can see how you have these conversations with customers. Like, I'm learning, I'm growing. I want to eventually get into a position like that. Like, do you mind if I come and sit in?" And it was not related to my everyday role. I obviously would put my everyday role responsibilities first so I could get my things done. But showing that genuine interest and saying, like, I mean, you gotta stroke the ego a little bit, saying like, "Hey, you are a killer. at this company. Like, I want to see how you do it. Like, that's awesome that you do it. And I want to be a part of it. So like, I'll be a fly on the wall. Let me just join your call and let me see how it's done. And I mean, that's a great way to start developing those relationships and mentorships at the same time. And there were even cases when I would get off of a call with somebody and they would just straight up ask me, and they say, hey, from an outsider perspective, how did I do? What do you think I could have done better? What questions could I have asked better? Did I handle these objections properly? Like, overall, what did you get out of it? And like, they started challenging me, and they might have already known the feedback, but at the same time, they were also helping coach me on those different aspects of the call and of the sale.
I would say too, when it comes to, we mentioned before, or Jovan mentioned before, that aspect of giving back, that's a place where you can unintentionally give back. If you're shadowing a call or you're shadowing another job and they ask for feedback, sometimes, yes, they're trying to prompt you to think deeper, but also you're giving them insight into their job that they probably don't get as often if they're in that level to mentorship. The feedback probably comes a little less than it does for you. So being able to provide an outside perspective and make them rethink their position is also another way to give a little something back, make that value in that relationship go two ways.
So I think another thing to take into consideration, because I mean, at the end of the day, this is about staying attractive to your employer. So you are the obvious choice. So seeking those mentorships, growing your network, those things are all very, very important. Once you've been in the role for a little bit, I mean, whether it's a year or 6 months or 5 years, there are always people that are going to start after you. That are going to be new hires. They're fresh out. They're ready to get started. And as important as it is to seek out a mentor, it's also important to be a mentor. Reaching out and developing relationships with those new people, because when they're having conversations with their managers, the manager's gonna ask a question like, "How is your first 6 months ramping up? How has it been? How has your first 2 weeks been?" "Oh, it's been great." And you know what? Alex has been extremely helpful in getting that kind of insight as well. And that, I don't want to call it recognition, but obviously that's not why I'm doing it, for the recognition, but at the same time, it doesn't hurt giving back to those the same way you want others to give back to you. So it's something to keep in mind as well.
And you don't have to mentor strictly in your job capacity either. I know I have taken on a couple mentorship roles unintentionally where just a little bit more professional experience, or like having 5 years of college behind me, because I didn't start in business like you guys did. I have a little something as far as development, professional development wise, that somebody younger than me sometimes wants, just that little bit of inside perspective, and they come to me asking questions. So it doesn't have to be in the job capacity. You could be mentoring somebody in a completely different department who just wants to grow and also make themselves a desirable prospect for a position or open to opportunities. So
most definitely. And that'll also, as Alex started to touch on, it'll make you a lot more attractive as well from a performance standpoint. That goes back to attitude and effort, making sure that you're going out of your way and giving back to the mentors you've had in your life, your career, by going ahead and giving what you've learned from them and giving them then back on to individuals that you'll take on to mentor. It looks great when you have a mentor. It looks even better when you're also mentoring somebody else at the same time, once you're ready. Don't necessarily overwhelm yourself with trying to mentor somebody before it might be too soon.
Jovan, what are your thoughts, or Jovan and Haley, what are your thoughts on having obviously a mentor within your company, but then also having a mentor outside of your organization to give a unique perspective? That's something that's been helpful for me, but curious on your thoughts there.
For me, I'm completely for it. I think you can have multiple mentors, and maybe for different reasons, because you're not necessarily going to have an individual. You might not necessarily find an individual that's everything in a way that you want to be, or that you might look up to in every area of their life. So it's completely okay to have multiple mentors. I have my mentors for work per se. I have, one of my big mentors, heroes, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. We don't necessarily get to connect every day, but as much as we possibly can. So it really just depends, but I'm a big advocate for having multiple mentors and individuals to look up to.
I'm really curious, when was the last time you connected with The Rock?
I'd have to check my call logs and my emails.
That would be awesome. I would agree. As far as having one inside out, one in and one out, or just having multiple from different aspects of life, because a lot of times those professional and those personal overlap so closely. The more avenues you have to pull from, and of course, you don't want to just have all these mentors, but having a couple good influences on you, a couple good people that kind of have your guiding points and principles of where you want to get to for whatever reason is great. Because sometimes you like somebody's work ethic, but their work ethic might be in a completely different field. And sometimes professionally, you like what somebody's doing in this industry, but maybe you live completely different lifestyles. So having different points and being able to marry the two together with your own action, it's great. So, and then kind of coming, because we are kind of wrapping up towards the end right now, I'm very interested. We've done this whole call and we've talked about how you make yourself a desirable applicant. And I noticed, and I don't know if you two noticed, we really didn't touch on like kind of those cliche things that you do in your early business development classes of like, you know, your resume or a press suit or, you know, the handshake or anything like that. So what your thoughts are on maybe some of those other things and how you know, what to really keep your eye on when you're making yourself open to opportunity.
I'm gonna kick this one off because I just recently had experience with it. I just recently took on a new position with a new company, and when I was preparing for interviews, I like in college. I mean, I was killing it with interviews. Like I loved interviews. Like I was always rocking and rolling, ready to go. Like I always felt good. And then when I started looking at some other opportunities and new opportunities, I started thinking about an interview, and I called Jovan, and I was like, dude, I'm filling out this application. Like, I think I've lost my edge. Like, I don't know what the heck is going on here. Like I am struggling. Like I'm over analyzing questions that are on this application. I'm like, what do I do? So I think it's important, not that you're always going to be looking for new opportunities, but you gotta just kind of stay on top of it. Obviously, a press suit is going to still look good, and you want to have a nice solid handshake, but you can't forget the basics. At the end of the day, make sure you're keeping your resume clean. Make sure you're doing that clean, but don't lose your edge. You gotta stay focused on it and remember and use those guiding shoulders and mentors to help you through those things.
Exactly. That was a fun time. You really were thinking every single question on that application.
It was awful. I don't even remember what the question was at this point. I was like, dude, I think they're trying to trick me. I was like, I think this is like an over analytical, like some way to test my ability to overcome a challenge, or I don't even remember what it was, but I just sat there and I was blanking. I think I called like 3 or 4 different people. I'm like, why would they ask me this question? And why, like, I have an interview tomorrow morning. Why would they ask me this question on the application the day before? Why not just ask me in the interview?
But really going into the day-to-day, the almost sort of the routine, make sure you're staying sharp. That's a big part, is that you really don't want to get complacent no matter where you are. Even, you know, you might have worked throughout your college career to have this position with this company that you love, but you'll realize that as soon as you get there, you're then, especially if you're an individual that's very hungry, you're looking for the next opportunity. That's your dream role, your dream position. It's really the way it's going to be. So you have to make sure that you're not getting complacent, that you're staying sharp, that you're, you know, what Alex is saying, making sure to continue to look sharp, continue to keep your resume sharp, and making sure that you're always ready for the next opportunity that presents itself that you're attracted to. Obviously, never too soon. Always reflect, always look at your goals, always look at what you want to do, maybe where you want to be geographically, and utilize that to your fullest advantage, utilize your mentors to your fullest advantage, but make sure that you're not getting complacent in your role, because when it comes down to being an attractive candidate, it really bundles and all comes together. If you're an attractive candidate, your company is going to want to fight to keep you. If you're an attractive candidate, other companies are probably going to want you. If they're actually going to probably want to hire you. And then on the flip side, if you're not being an attractive candidate, your company's probably going to look to lay you off the first time they need to. And on the flip side, it's going to be a lot harder for you to actually find another company to go to once that happens. So it really does all come together. Stay sharp, guys.
Yeah. So it's funny that you say that, because this is something that I just went through, but mindset is key in those situations too. What I had experienced is when I started thinking like I need to start looking for a new opportunity, I refused to entertain any recruiter that would reach out to me on LinkedIn or that would send me an email. I refused to look at job postings. I refused to do it until I made that decision clear to myself that I was looking for a new opportunity. And what people fall into the trap of is like, they experience some unhappiness, they experience some challenge or some pain points that are happening, which is going to happen no matter where you go. But if you don't accept those changes and try to see the brighter side of it and work towards it and try to overcome those obstacles, and you automatically say, okay, this sucks, I'm out, like I'm going to start looking, but then you don't find a job, then your mindset at that point is going to be completely flushed. You are not going to perform at work. You are not going to be an attractive candidate. You're not going to be one to go up for promotion. So just make sure you are keeping your mind right when you're ready to make that change, and that's like a for sure thing, like I am ready to move on, then start looking. Don't start looking in the midst of you going back and forth on whether you're going to stay or go, because it will affect you, and it'll affect you personally. It'll affect you personally and mentally as well, and it'll put you in a tough bind. And I experienced that firsthand, so that's something that I would want anybody listening to this and you two to know as well. It's a rocky path.
And Alex, I'm sure you'd agree on this too, to always, end those relationships. I shouldn't even say end those relationships, but keep those relationships on a good note, because you're never going to know when your prior employer, your prior manager might put in a recommendation, or, you might need them to put in a recommendation for you for another role or for a position or whatever it may be. So make sure that you're not ending on bad notes with your prior employers. That really can go a long way.
Absolutely. It's unbelievable how much that'll help you. And you never know if your path might cross again, especially if you're going to a bigger company. Who knows if your manager ends up leaving and coming and ending up at your same company, and now he's your manager again, and you're like, oh boy, here we go. Good thing I burnt every bridge that I had. So you never know.
I actually, the current role that I'm in, my prior manager is now my customer. So if you can imagine if I would have burned that bridge.
I was going to say that happens all the time. We have our CFO, he worked for a company before, and I swear they get mentioned every other day because so-and-so knows somebody that used to work with him there. And actually one of our younger marketing members is the daughter of one of his old coworkers. So when they hired her, he's like, wait, I know that last name. I know that person. Last time I saw her, she was like 2 feet tall, but yeah. And then, we hired our office manager, and she knew our marketing manager because is a family friend. And then before she even started working, when she was hired, before her start date, she referred somebody over, and he became our sales manager later down the road. So it's a small world for all the billions of people that are in it or whatever. Is there any other advice that the two of you would like to give to somebody if they are really looking for that new opportunity, or they're just really trying to stay sharp on the opportunities within their own company before we close out?
I think just overall, mindset is a huge thing. I know I just touched on that, but I mean, it's in all aspects of your life. It's your professional and it's your personal life. It's with your relationships. It's with your work. I mean, it's everywhere. I was just telling you guys before we started recording that somebody wrote a post saying their life completely changed because they make their bed every morning, which is a wild thing to think about. But once you get into those routines, like whether it's, not everything is for everybody. Some people read, some people listen to podcasts, some people make their bed, some people don't. I mean, just find what works for you, but make sure that those habits that you are entering into are healthy habits. because that's what's going to keep your mind sharp. It's going to help you not become complacent. It's going to help you want to do more. It's going to keep you focused with your goals and your dreams and your desires. And once all of those things come together, I mean, that dramatically increases your efficiency, your effectiveness, and your talent and ability. So taking those things into consideration, I think if you're doing those things, you're always going to be the most attractive candidate that you can. And you guys just met my dog. He just walked past me here. So
yeah, definitely. A big thing too, guys, get into a routine. Get into a routine as early as you can. It can be very, very hard in college, but try your hardest to, because once you become an adult, if you don't have a routine, it's going to be very hard to keep your life on track. Another big thing too is, I've talked about self-reflection a lot today. Self-reflect as much as you can. Review your goals if you can daily, if not weekly, if not monthly. But make sure that you are staying sharp by reflecting what you actually want to do and what you actually want to achieve, and go out and make it happen. Mindset is everything. If you think that you are something that you want to be, before you know it, you're going to end up being what it is that you want it to be. So keep that in mind. Mindset's everything. Stay sharp, get in routine, read more.
Bingo.
That's what I got.
Just was gonna say, I am Beyonce. I am Beyonce. I'll add something just because, with you two talking about mindset and talking about like the routine and those things that set that great foundation for everything else, is not just a mentor or somebody like that, but make sure that of all the people that you interact with and all those people you pull into your close circle, make sure at least one of those is a great accountability partner. Because we have bad days and we have downtimes, and it's great to be able to hold ourselves accountable. But for those times you falter, it's great to have that person to come in and say, hey, did you say what do what you were going to say, or what you're going to do? I had somebody say, ask me, I like writing and things. Okay, what do you want to do to make that dream of writing more happen? And then she checked in a week later, hey, did you start writing for 30 minutes a night like we talked about? And I was like, oh man, no, I didn't. So an accountability partner, somebody like that, it might be that extra little push you need when you're going through a tough time or when you're as forgetful as I am. So, all right. Well, I want to thank you both for coming on this show and everybody for tuning in for this episode. Again, I'm super excited to share it with you. We will have a transcript and our blog posts. And of course, you can find this on YouTube and all of our main listening platforms where podcasts are found. And thank you, Alex and Jovan, for showing up and giving us such great advice.
Thank you, Haley. Thank you for having us and thinking of us. It's really been awesome.
All right. Thank you. And everybody have a great day.